The knock came just as I was pouring my morning coffee. Sharp, insistent, the kind of knock that demanded attention, not patience. I wasn't expecting company. Not today. Not after the week I'd had. Setting my mug down, I wiped my hands on my robe and made my way to the door, exhaling slowly. I wasn't prepared for what I saw when I opened it. There she stood. Ashley, my husband's new girlfriend. The one he had left me for. The one he had flaunted in public while I had been left to pick up the shattered pieces of my life. She was grinning. I barely had time to process the sight of her before she spoke, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "You need to start packing, Sarah. We're moving in." She tilted her head, eyes gleaming with triumph, as she held up a folded piece of paper. "A deed? A contract?" I couldn't tell. "Mark didn't tell you?" She smirked. "This house is his now, so I'd start boxing up your things, if I were you. We're taking over." A slow, creeping chill spread through my chest. But instead of anger or panic, I felt something else. Something colder, something calmer. I let my lips curl into a smile. Because I wasn't alone. Behind her, standing just out of her line of sight, was my lawyer. And I knew something she didn't. It had started months ago. Or maybe, if I was honest, years. Mark and I had been married for 12 years. And for most of that time, I had been the wife who held things together. The one who organized the finances. The one who made sure the mortgage was paid. The one who put in the effort when Mark started pulling away. I had ignored the signs at first. The late nights at work. The way his phone suddenly never left his hand. The whispered calls in the other room. But then, I saw them together. It was supposed to be a girls' night out. A break from the stress of a marriage I was desperately trying to hold on to. But fate had other plans. There they were, in the corner of the restaurant, his hand resting on hers, laughing like I had never seen him laugh in years. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't confront him. Not then. Instead, I went home and started planning. Because if Mark thought he could humiliate me, if he thought he could take what was mine and walk away unscathed, he was wrong. Ashley's smile grew wider as she mistook my silence for shock. "I know this is hard for you, Sarah," she said, feigning sympathy as she tucked the papers under her arm. "But Mark and I are in love. It's time for you to move on." She placed a manicured hand on the doorframe as if she already owned it, as if she had already won. I almost laughed, but instead I took a slow step back and gestured for her to come inside. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. She wasn't expecting that. She stepped in cautiously, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors I had chosen, the house I had built, the walls that held years of my life, memories, struggles, victories. Behind her, my lawyer followed, silent and composed. I closed the door. Then I turned to face her. "Ashley," I said smoothly, taking my time, "there's something you should know." Her smirk faltered. My lawyer stepped forward, finally making his presence known. And then, the real game began. Ashley's smirk faded as my lawyer took a step forward, his presence finally sinking in. The confidence she had waltzed in with, the arrogance of someone who thought she had already won, was starting to crack. "What? What is this?" she asked, her voice not quite as steady now. I let out a breath, slow and measured, before speaking. "You seem so sure of yourself, Ashley," I said, tilting my head, watching her. "Like you think you already own this house. Like you think you and Mark have outsmarted me." Her fingers tightened around the papers she was holding, her posture shifting slightly. She was starting to realize something was off, but she wasn't quite ready to let go of her smug confidence. "Mark transferred ownership to himself," she snapped, holding up the document. "He said you didn't have a choice. This house is his now." We checked. I smiled again. "Did you?" I glanced at my lawyer, who had remained quiet this whole time, calmly flipping through his folder. He adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, addressing me formally, ignoring Ashley completely. "Would you like to explain, or shall I?" I turned back to Ashley, taking in the way her confidence was finally beginning to waver. "Go ahead," I said. "I think she should hear it from a professional." My lawyer cleared his throat and looked at Ashley, who was gripping the papers now, like they were a lifeline. "You see, miss, Ashley, is it?" He didn't wait for her answer. The house wasn't Mark's to give away. Silence. Ashley blinked. "What?" My lawyer continued, his tone patient, almost amused. "This house," he gestured around us, "was never in Mark's name. Not before, not now, and certainly not in the divorce proceedings." Ashley's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly, shaking her head. "That's not true," she scoffed. "Mark told me." "Mark lied," I cut in. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I turned and walked to the side table near the entrance, picking up a very different set of papers. The real documents. I held them up between my fingers. "This house was mine before I even met Mark," I said, my voice calm, firm. "It was left to me in my grandmother's will. I never added Mark to the deed, no matter how many times he asked. He had no legal claim to it during our marriage, and he certainly doesn't have one now." Ashley's lips parted, but she still said nothing. I took a step closer. "Whatever paperwork he gave you, whatever promises he made, it's worthless." The silence between us stretched for a long moment, and then the realization hit her. I saw it in her face, the way her smugness turned to confusion, then doubt, and finally panic. Mark had always underestimated me. I remembered the way he used to laugh when I insisted on keeping certain things separate. "Why does it matter?" he would say. "We're married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine." Except in his mind, that had never been true. What was mine was his, and what was his was only his. I had seen it early on, the way he'd casually take money from our joint account, but hesitate when it came to sharing anything of his. I had ignored it then. I told myself that marriage was about trust, about compromise. I had trusted him, and he had bet on me, being too naive, too emotionally wrecked by his betrayal to fight back. But what he didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I had been fighting back since the day I saw him with her. Ashley took a shaky breath and squared her shoulders. "Mark said the house was his," she repeated, but this time it sounded more like she was trying to convince herself. He said he worked it out with the lawyers." My lawyer sighed, closing his folder. "He worked nothing out," he said bluntly. "What he did was attempt to file fraudulent paperwork, which I assume is what you're holding right now." Ashley's grip on the papers loosened slightly. I folded my arms and waited, letting the silence do the rest of the work. "And then," she snapped. "That bastard," she muttered under her breath, her voice shaking with anger. I raised an eyebrow. "Is something wrong, Ashley?" She turned toward me so fast I almost laughed. "He told me this was his house. He said he was throwing you out. He said we could move in and start over." I tilted my head. "And you believed him?" Her eyes flashed, but she didn't answer. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She had just realized something. If Mark had lied about this, what else had he lied about? She turned to my lawyer. "So you're saying, legally, he has nothing?" My lawyer adjusted his tie. "That's exactly what I'm saying." Ashley inhaled sharply, her hand tightening around her phone. She was calculating, deciding her next move. I already knew what she was going to do. She was going to call Mark. She was going to demand answers. She was going to realize, far too late, that she had hitched her future to a sinking ship. I let the corner of my mouth twitch up in amusement. She thought she was walking into a victory. Instead, she was walking into a lesson, one that Mark had learned the hard way. Ashley's hands were shaking as she gripped her phone, her manicured nails tapping furiously against the screen. I watched with mild amusement as she scrolled through her contacts, her breath coming in short, angry bursts. She was panicking. The shift in her demeanor was almost comical. Just minutes ago, she had stood in my doorway, victorious, certain that she was moving into my house. Now she was scrambling, desperate to understand just how badly she had been played. I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching the inevitable unfold. She hit dial. The phone rang, once, twice. Then, Mark answered. "Hey, babe." Mark's voice rang through the speaker, confident, cocky, completely unaware of the storm brewing on the other end. Ashley didn't waste a second. "You lying piece of garbage!" she shrieked, her voice rising with every word. "You told me the house was yours, that we were moving in, that you threw Sarah out." Silence. I could practically hear Mark blinking in confusion on the other end. What?" Ashley spun toward me, eyes blazing. "Tell him." I smirked and took a slow sip of my coffee before setting the mug down. "Hey, Mark," I said smoothly. "Interesting day we're having, huh?" There was another pause. Longer this time. Then his voice returned. But it wasn't as confident anymore. "What's going on?" Ashley gritted her teeth. "What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. I just showed up at Sarah's house, ready to move in like you told me, and guess what?" She turned back to me, eyes burning with fury. "Sarah still owns the house." I could almost hear Mark's stomach drop through the phone. That's not possible," he stammered. I filed the paperwork." Ashley cut him off. "You filed nothing. You lied to me. You said we'd be starting fresh. You said you took care of everything." Mark's breathing grew heavier. He was realizing, far too late, that his brilliant plan had just fallen apart, and I was enjoying every second of it. "You don't understand," Mark said quickly. "I was going to fix it," Ashley scoffed. "Fix it? You told me we had nothing to worry about. You told me you got everything in the divorce." I raised an eyebrow at that. "Everything?" "Oh, Mark, you poor delusional man." I crossed my arms and decided to help him out. "Mark, you didn't get the house. You didn't get the business. You didn't even get the joint account you tried to drain. The only thing you got was your car." Ashley turned back to the phone. "And that car is what? A 10-year-old sedan?" Mark was silent. Ashley let out a bitter laugh. "Oh my God, you really have nothing." I watched her expression shift, something dangerous flickering in her eyes. She was starting to realize that Mark wasn't the prize she thought he was. Ashley inhaled sharply, pacing the room, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I left everything for you, Mark," she hissed, voice shaking. "I believed in you. I trusted you." Mark was still scrambling, still trying to control the situation. "Baby, listen. Don't you dare baby me," she snapped. "You told me we'd be living in a beautiful house. You told me we'd be set for life. And now you're telling me you have nothing? That we have nothing?" She was unraveling fast, and I wasn't about to stop her. I walked over to the counter and leaned against it, watching them melt down like a spectator at a particularly entertaining play. Mark's voice grew more desperate. "Ashley, come on, we're in this together." Ashley let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "No, Mark, you dragged me into this mess. I didn't sign up to be broke and homeless with you." She suddenly turned to me, her eyes wild. "You planned this," she accused. "You wanted me to find out like this." I shrugged. "I didn't force you to show up at my house uninvited, Ashley. That was all you." Her lips parted, then snapped shut. She had no comeback for that. The reality of the situation was sinking in. Mark had used her, played her just like he had tried to play me. And now? She was paying the price for believing his lies. Ashley turned back to the phone, her entire body trembling with rage. "I should have known," she seethed. "You didn't love me. You just needed someone stupid enough to go along with your little fantasy." Mark's voice was full of panic now. "Ashley, please." Click. She hung up. And then, she turned to me, her face a mixture of humiliation, rage, and something else, something I knew all too well. Regret. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, Ashley did the one thing I never expected. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "I can't believe I fell for him." I shrugged. "It happens." She exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over her face. Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and walked out. I watched her leave, wondering what would become of her now. Would she run back to Mark? Try to salvage what little dignity she had left? Or would she do the smart thing, cut her losses, and walk away for good? Either way, it didn't matter to me, because the one thing I knew for sure was this: Mark had lost, and for the first time in a long time, I had won. Ashley's footsteps echoed down my driveway as she stormed away, phone clutched in her shaking hand. She had come here thinking she was stepping into her new life. Instead, she had walked straight into a humiliating reality check. I didn't call after her. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her choices. Now, she had to live with them. I turned back to my lawyer, who was still calmly flipping through his notes, as if we hadn't just watched a woman's entire world collapse in real time. "Well," he said, finally looking up. "That was entertaining." I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. "She thought she won," I murmured. "She really thought she had everything figured out." My lawyer smirked. "That's what happens when people believe the wrong person." And with that, I closed the door, locking out the past for good. I barely had time to take a sip of my now cold coffee before my phone buzzed. Mark. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. A part of me wanted to ignore him, to let him stew in his mess. But another part of me wanted to hear the desperation in his voice. Curiosity won. I picked up, keeping my voice steady. "What do you want, Mark?" His breathing was uneven, laced with frustration and panic. "Sarah, whatever you told Ashley, you need to fix it. She just called me screaming, saying I ruined her life. You made me look like an idiot." I smirked, swirling my coffee with a spoon. "Mark, you did that all on your own." Silence. Then, his tone shifted. "Listen, let's talk. We don't have to fight like this. We were married for 12 years, Sarah. You can't just throw me away like I'm nothing." I almost laughed at the pure hypocrisy. "Oh, but you could throw me away?" I asked, my voice cold now. "You could walk out, drain our accounts, move on with your younger upgrade, and expect me to just accept it." "That's different," he snapped. I made mistakes, okay? But I was hurt too. We weren't happy." I let his words settle in the air for a moment. Then I asked, "Are you happy now, Mark?" More silence. I already knew the answer. As much as I wanted to hang up and never hear his voice again, I had one more thing to say. "By the way, Mark," I said, keeping my tone light, "I got a call from my lawyer this morning." I heard him swallow. "And? Your petition to revisit the divorce settlement?" I paused, letting it sink in. The judge dismissed it. Again. His frustration turned to outright rage. "This isn't fair, Sarah. You set me up. You planned this whole thing behind my back." I couldn't help but smile. "No, Mark," I said calmly. "I just paid attention." And with that, I hung up. I expected that to be the last of my interactions with Mark. I was wrong. 2 days later, Ashley was back at my doorstep. Only this time, there was no smug grin, no condescending tone. She looked defeated. Her usually perfect makeup was smudged. Her blonde hair, which had always been styled to perfection, was messy, like she hadn't had the energy to fix it. I folded my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Ashley," I greeted, keeping my voice neutral. "What do you want?" She hesitated, shifting her weight. She looked down, then back up at me, biting her lip. And then, she did something I never expected. She apologized. "I was stupid," she said, her voice cracking. "I believed him. He told me you were cold, controlling, that you didn't support him. I thought," she shook her head, laughing bitterly, "I thought I was different, that he wouldn't do to me what he did to you." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "But you were right," she whispered. "Everything you said. He used me. He took my money, maxed out my credit cards, and when I asked him to help with rent," her eyes glistened with unshed tears, "he told me I was too much to handle, that I was holding him back. And just like that, Ashley had become me." I exhaled, studying her carefully. "So what now?" I asked. "You running back to him?" She laughed again, shaking her head. Number, I'm done. She hesitated. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I watched her for a long moment. I wasn't sure if I forgave her, but I did understand her, because I had been exactly where she was standing now. I nodded, stepping back. Good luck, Ashley. She gave me a small, sad smile, and then she walked away. That night, I sat in my living room, with a glass of wine, reflecting on everything that had happened. I had thought revenge would feel different, that when Mark finally hit rock bottom, I'd feel a rush of victory. But the truth? I didn't feel anything for him anymore. I had won, because I had moved on, because I had built something of my own. And Mark? He was still stuck in the same cycle of self-destruction. That wasn't my problem anymore. My lawyer had sent me one final update. Mark had applied for a new credit card. He was denied. He tried to get a loan. He was denied. He was drowning. And for once, I wasn't going to save him. I lifted my glass to no one in particular and whispered, "Good luck, Mark." And just like that, I closed the chapter on him forever. The morning was crisp and quiet as I stepped into my boutique, the little shop that Mark had once mocked. The bell above the door chimed softly, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. No more legal battles, no more phone calls from my ex, no more shadows of the past looming over me. I had won, not in the way Mark had feared, not with shouting or bitter revenge, but by simply living well. I had outgrown him, and nothing felt better than knowing that. I hadn't heard from Mark in weeks. After our last conversation, the one where he begged me to fix things for him, I assumed he had finally given up. But then, this morning, I saw it. A message from an unknown number. I knew exactly who it was before I even opened it. Mark. Sarah, I messed up. I know you probably hate me, but I need help. I lost my job and I have nowhere to go. Can we just talk? Please? I stared at the words on my screen, waiting for the anger to come. The resentment. The urge to throw the phone across the room and scream about how unfair it was. That even now, after everything, he still thought he could use me. But I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. I deleted the message. And that was it. No more Mark, no more past, just my future. A week later, Ashley came into my boutique. She hesitated near the entrance, looking nervous, uncertain if she should even be here. I folded my arms and waited. She took a deep breath, then walked toward the counter. I got a job. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? She nodded. Marketing. It's not much, but it's mine. For the first time, Ashley didn't look like the smug, self-assured woman who had stood at my door weeks ago. She looked real, humbled, changed. I gave her a slow nod. Good for you. She let out a shaky laugh. Honestly, I don't know how you put up with him for so long. I smirked. I don't either. She hesitated again. I know I don't deserve it, but do you think we could be friends? I thought about it. About everything she had done, everything she had learned, everything I had learned. And then I gave her a small smile. Not friends, but maybe one day. That was enough for her. She nodded, bought a scarf from my boutique, and walked out the door. Starting fresh, just like I had. It was a year later when I saw him again. At a gas station, of all places. I had pulled in to fill up my car when I spotted him across the lot, standing by a rusted sedan that was barely holding together. He looked different, thinner, tired, a little lost. For a moment, our eyes met, and in that brief second, I knew exactly what he was thinking. She got everything, and I have nothing. But what Mark never understood was that I didn't win because I took things from him. I won because I rebuilt myself, because I refused to let him take my future the way he had tried to take my past. I gave him a small nod. Nothing more. And then I drove away. That was the last time I ever saw Mark. Years later, my boutique expanded into 3 more locations. I had new friends, new adventures. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back. I kept a framed quote in my office, right above my desk. One simple reminder of everything I had survived. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's moving on. And that's exactly what I did.